Hi, welcome to another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty, Infidelity Survival Stories. I'm Tracy Shorn, otherwise known as Chump Lady, and I'm here with my co-host Sarah Gorel. And today's guest is...
Bad relationship advice.
Today and in future podcasts, Sarah and I will be discussing key tenets of the reconciliation industrial complex. You know, the affair-proof your marriage folks, the follow the recipe carefully for $39.99 installments. Today's bullshit is the 180. If you've ever spent any time on infidelity forums, you're probably familiar with the term coined by therapist Michelle Weiner-Davis of divorce busting fame. It is a set of instructions for chumps to follow after they've been cheated on, how to conduct oneself so that your cheater will sit up and take notice. So Sarah, I'm going to run some of this 180 past you, and you can run them past me. I've sent you a list that came from the Divorce Busting Resource Center, and you can tell me if you've ever done this, and if so, how did that work out?
Or you can
just vomit.
I've just looked through the list and I feel quite embarrassed that, yes, I have done quite a lot of these, but we'll talk about how it actually worked out.
Well, I was a chump too.
A lot.
and this is just, I just sent you a small smattering. I think there's like 40 items, and some of them are redundant and contradict each other, but you know, just to confuse you further. Okay, here's the first one I highlighted. Do not ask for help from family members.
So make sure that you're nice and alone and alienated and on your own with this. Actually, that one I didn't do because I've always been somebody that talks to people, and that to me is so alien.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to my family, I talk to my friends. I know that this is a big thing on these the reconciliation form, you know, keep it to yourself, don't undermine the relationship. If you tell somebody else, it's kind of undermine. No, I did tell people, and I'm glad I did, because
I think it's healthy. Yeah, I told people too.
I can't imagine. That is so alien to me. You know, it's what abusers do is alienate their victims from their support network. And it just seems astounding that somebody is offering advice to get people to do that themselves. Ridiculous.
Well, I mean, this therapist clearly doesn't see this as abuse, but I totally agree with you. And I think the argument that the reconciliation people make is that, well, if you tell people, like if you told your family, now they're going to hate the cheater, and it's going to be harder to reconcile because your family's going to be set against them, and they're going to know this private thing that's just between, you know, the two of you, and it could influence their opinion of this person. And I think that's madness on many levels. Assuming you could have an authentic reconciliation, and I am a huge skeptic, but assuming that was possible, I think you would have to stop and take your medicine and recognize that the person that you've traumatized is absolutely free to speak about this. It happened. It's the truth. And you're just further traumatizing them by making them carry your secrets. And secrets are how you got into this mess. So that's our first nugget of really bad relationship advice. So
I just wonder. I know what the reasoning is behind this, but it's just such a ridiculous piece of advice. I would be stunned if many people were able to follow that through.
I don't know. All right, you choose a favorite.
Be cheerful, strong, outgoing, and attractive. Of course, it's your fault, isn't it, that your other half is having an affair, because you're not cheerful, strong, outgoing, and attractive. You're sort of a bit of a wet lettuce, and you've driven them to it.
Well, yeah. And if you flag, if you do not, you know, if you fail to be strong, outgoing, and attractive, you know, the dick may wander.
Did you do this then? Did you get yourself into joyful, happy, outgoing, attractive mode? Because obviously the previous mode wasn't up to scratch.
I know. When I was a newlywed, no, when I found out, I spent a lot of time puking. I was like physically like knocked out from this revelation. The last thing I felt was cheerful. No, I was not cheerful. I was grinding my teeth and puking and sobbing and having my hair fall out. And I mean, it was rough, man. So I just think this is total nonsense. And also, it minimizes how traumatic it is to go through this. I mean, maybe I will give Michelle Weiner-Davis the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's saying, oh, we're doing this 6 months to a year later. But even then, when you think about this experience of discovering your partner's double life, I don't think cheerful is the first thing that's going to come to mind. And I think it's this idea of like, well, I'm harumph. I'm fine without you. Look at me being fabulous, which is just a way of doing the pick me dance. It is the pick me dance, is what this is encouraging. And also,
I would say do it for yourself. Try and do it for yourself, but not for them. But you're so right. It's so difficult to do. And I think you hear about the divorce diet where people lose a lot of weight. And I did. I wasn't overweight, but I lost an enormous amount of weight. And I thought I would looked amazing because, of course, I was thinner than I'd ever been. And I look back on the photos now, and I just looked ill and worried and it's asking you to be something you're not. Who would have a reaction to what's going on?
It's totally inauthentic. And also, if you have no experience, and who does, right? Nobody has this happen to them and knows how to navigate it. And then you get advice like this from a so-called expert, and you think you're grieving all wrong. You're like, oh, other people discover the hooker habit and are strong, outgoing, and attractive? Really? Like, it doesn't rock their world? They're not in a ball, like catatonic from this knowledge. To me, it is really, it's such a mind fuck. It's and again, I understand the batshit crazy impulse where this is coming from, which is, pull yourself up by your socks and, put a brave face on and, they'll see what they're missing, it's, yeah. I agree with you. Be all these things for yourself with people who love you, people who you can be safe with, but absolutely not to your abuser. Okay, it's my turn to pick one. Do not spy on your spouse. Don't spy.
So again, no, I didn't follow that because I just had to know. I did all sorts of investigations, and although initially I did dismiss some of the behaviour that was going on and thought, oh no, he's the fact that he's disappearing off with his phone and he's on the phone for hours. It really is work that's talking to him. It really is,
Mhm.
But why wouldn't you want to know what was happening? Why spy is such a negative word as well. It turns you into some kind of weird, creepy individual that wants to
Right.
know stuff that you're not entitled to know. It's not spying, is it? To want to know if your other half is cheating on you.
Well, right. And they've already demonstrated that they're deceitful. So you can say trust but verify or whatever. It's putting the onus on you to not be the bad guy spying versus no, they have violated your trust and they should be demonstrating transparency to you. And to say don't yeah, I get it. It's victim blaming, right? You're not spying on them. Are you being vigilant? I mean, this could be a topic of a whole, podcast in and of itself, an episode. But my feeling is when you're GPSing their car and when you're doing deep dives and you're hacking like the trust is gone, give up, it's over, this is not your best self. But I completely understand why people do it because they've been gaslighted to levels of insanity. It is the theft of your reality, and you are trying desperately to figure out what's real and what's a lie. And the person you're partnered with doesn't want to tell you what's going on, right? Because they're not leading with unvarnished honesty here. So yeah, I understand why people spy. To not spy is to say, oh, I'm going to trust you. I'm just going to give you a blank check of my trust, and you're not going to risk my health, my finances, my children's home life, whatever it is. And I know from literally millions of stories on the blog that that's exactly what happens to people. It gets worse.
There's no time scale on this either. So I'm just thinking, if you follow, how long are you supposed to follow this advice for before you finally give up? So you're supposed to be this cheerful, joyful, happy, attractive individual, and you're supposed to ask no questions at all, or
Yes.
not investigate what your partner is up to when clearly they are up to no good.
Well, and
How long do you follow this through, this advice?
well,
It could go on
did
for
you see the
years.
last one? Did you see the last one? It's that don't give up. Don't give up. So if these things didn't work out for you, it's because you gave up, Sarah. You gave up.
So that's where we failed. That's
Number
we gave up.
33, do not give
Big-
up. No matter how dark it is or how bad you feel, no matter how much this advice blows up in your face, do not give up.
So basically, you follow the advice and
Yeah,
it doesn't get you anywhere. And then it's your fault when it all goes wrong because you gave up.
that's right. That's right. You were not cheerful, strong, and attractive enough.
No. Yeah.
Okay. Pick another one. There's so many.
Right. Again, this is fairly similar. If you're in the habit of asking your spouse her whereabouts, ask nothing. That is sort of very similar to the last one as well, isn't it? A lot of this advice is kind of a different way of writing the same thing. And this is again, be cheerful and attractive. Do not be nasty, angry, or even cold.
Mhm.
Just pull back and wait and see if the spouse notices, and more important, realizes what she will be missing. This is all the pick me dance, isn't it? Really.
It is. Yeah. And you know that you made him or her wander by being nasty, angry, and cold.
So really, all this advice could be incorporated into just one piece of advice, which is let them do whatever they fancy. Don't question them. Don't be nasty. Be
Mhm.
some joyful individual and dancing around telling them how magnificent they are. That's pretty much the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, I think you missed a spot. I think you faltered. You had a bad feeling, and you should blame yourself. Really, just blame yourself.
I
The
think
whole nasty.
it's the language in this as well. It's all focusing. It's kind of focusing on you as the blamed person. Do
Mm,
not be desperate or needy,
yeah,
even when you're hurting more than ever, and you are desperate and needy. So desperate and needy, it's so negative. It implies that you are some sort of sad individual. It doesn't imply that the kind of behavior that's going on is what would make anybody like that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and think about it. I mean, if you look at it through the lens of abuse, which we do, if somebody hit you, if they pistol whipped you, if they pushed your face into a window or something, would a therapist go, don't be sad, desperate, or needy? You know, no, we would think that was appalling, that was, it was terrible. I mean, so to give someone this advice is not to recognize that they're completely traumatized. I mean, I think of Martina, who we had here, the other week, who, her husband would just abandon her and three children periodically. How could that? You have deep sunk costs with somebody. How could you not feel anything but desperate and needy if you thought your husband was just going to wander out and the world was going to drop out from under you at any moment? Yes, abandonment will make you feel desperate, sad, and needy. You know, don't feel those things. This is it's crazy. It's crazy making.
It's
Um,
I'm just trying. Have you have you? Let's look at some more of these points. Then, is there anything that you can see that you think, oh yeah, there's a point there that might work?
I, you know, I, hmm. It's like all the best propaganda. There's always a little nugget of truth or nugget of, something good that then gets twisted. One of them is like never lose your cool. Yes, absolutely, don't lose your cool. If it feels good, don't do it. Um, no revenge, no contact. That's what I preach. No contact. Get away.
Because I'm looking at some of these and I'm thinking, yeah, this is good advice. Take care of yourself, be strong and confident. But
Yeah.
I think the key is in the yourself. And I think be strong and confident. Know that you can manage without them. You do not need them. It just needs a little bit of elaboration, some of this advice.
Right. But you see that it's contradictory. You're saying you don't need them, but then you also want them to realize what they will be missing. That says that you're still tied to them, you still care what they think, you're still doing this performative crap that you don't feel, all to win a cheater. And the other thing is all of this advice assumes and props up their ententlement, you know.
I find the language surrounding this really interesting as well. So we're desperate and needy because obviously because of their behavior. But
Mm.
then it says Number 32, don't believe any of what you hear and less than 50% of what you see. Your spouse will speak in absolute negatives because they're hurting and scared.
Oh,
Bless them. We're
well,
desperate and needy. They're hurting and
they're
scared.
hurting and scared. This is the timid forest creature that I talk about. You can't bring it up, Sarah, because this is very, very painful for them. Harder, really, much harder than it is for you. And yeah, don't ask them questions, you know. And if they want to talk about their complicated love rhombus, you have to listen carefully. They may be grieving because they are sad and scared.
They're a very timid creature, though, that needs some gentle handling. If you look at this advice, so it's going to be a delicate balancing act, getting this all absolutely right. So we've got to be patient, we've got
Yes.
to be strong and confident, but we can't be overly enthusiastic because we
No.
might frighten them. So we can't be
Cheerful, but
too
not
can't
too
be
cheerful.
no, and we can't be too strong and confident because that might come across as overly enthusiastic, and that might be terrifying for our poor, hurting, scared individual. I mean, this is quite a tricky array of emotions and behavior to get your head around and to get absolutely right so that you don't lose your special cheetah, that you don't backslide from your hard-earned
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole, I was going to, I mean, we can segue a moment from the 180, but I was taking a deep dive into the website from whence this came, Divorce Busters, Michelle Weiner-Davis. And there's a whole thing about the terror of being a single mother and why she got into divorce busting. And it is, of course, it wasn't cited, but it's essentially how your children are going to turn out terrible, Sarah, because you're a single mother. And I, there is nothing I hate more than this fear mongering of people, women. It usually happens in women, that you're going to lose your status, that you're going to be a bad mother, that your children will suffer. And it's always put on the chump, right? It's always put on the chump. You're the bad guy. You're going to bail. You're going to be the person who causes the divorce because you weren't cheerful, whatever, and confident. Versus, no, this person who you don't control and you don't control the situation drove your relationship into a ditch and harmed it beyond measure. And the sane thing to do is to get away from the chaos and the dysfunction and stop modeling it to your children. Now, the whole will you suffer economically? Is it going to be hard? Yeah. And speaking of the United States, we don't have the kind of social safety net that we should, and we don't support single mothers and families and family leave and all that like we should. But those are systemic problems. That has nothing to do with the quality of your parenting. Anyway, I hate those.
It
Yeah,
kind of ties in with this advice as well, as sort of being not terribly authentic. So presenting this cheerful, strong, attractive, joyful image. What this advice is saying is you don't want to be a single parent is just pretend, present this false family, because the likelihood is you are already a single parent. They're already going out and about.
yeah,
You're not allowed to question them as they go out and about, probably spending family money, not there for the children. And you might not feel like you're a single parent, but you probably, I mean, I now know, I look back now and I think actually I had a fifth child. I was a
yeah.
single parent, but I was a single parent. Plus, I was dancing around after a fully grown child as well. And being a single parent and knowing you're a single parent, you can deal with that. It's a lot easier than being a two family parent and dealing with all sorts of antics and shenanigans and someone that's lying and cheating
Yeah,
and telling you things and you don't know where they are, but you're not allowed to spy on them. And then when
yeah.
they come home, you've got to be joyful and attractive and but not overly enthusiastic. I mean, when you start to analyze this advice, it's just ridiculous.
But it is the advice. I mean, this, at least when it happened to me, this was the only advice out there. And I was talking to Paul, my husband, about it this morning. I hadn't looked at this stuff in eons, and it just, the further out I am from this experience, the more absurd and maddening this kind of advice seems. And he pointed out, he goes, it's a recipe. See, that's where it gets chumps. It's a recipe. And when you're going through this and you're so vulnerable and your world is spiraling out of control, here's someone going, if you do steps 1 through 34, you can fix this. you can get the control back. You can feel safe and secure again. You just have to follow the recipe. You have to do the steps. And to people who are feeling powerless and out of control, this is so seductive. It's so seductive. And then when it doesn't work, you're like, oh, I wasn't cheerful. Like, then you
This is
blame
all about
yourself.
this is all about removing any of your own control as well. So this one, all questions about marriage should be put on hold until your spouse wants to talk about it, which
Mhm.
may be a while because of course they're hurting and they're scared and they might
They are.
you'll be, I suppose, tying in with the other advice, you'll be being overly enthusiastic if you try and barge in and try and get them to talk about things.
You don't want to be
It's
nasty, angry, or cold.
it's telling you to be and I did follow this kind of advice because there's a lot of it out there, and I had one where they gave you a daily email just telling you what you should do, and I used to religiously follow this,
Oh God.
and it didn't work. It just got me. I mean, it was joyful, it was brilliant for him because what it meant was he had his affair. I knew by this point that he was having an affair, and
Mhm.
I just had to be the passive little woman at home, putting on the makeup,
Oh
cooking
my
his
God.
food, never asking any questions, allowing him. I remember there's one moment that sticks in my mind, and it was when the children were very young when he left, and we would it was a Saturday and we'd been doing baking or something. So there was me and there was the four children around the kitchen table making cakes. It was like one of those joyful family scenes,
Aw.
and he then went, oh, I've got to go I'm going to a lads night now, and I knew he wasn't going to a lads,
What?
and I just had to let him go. And he turned back, he looked at me with the children, and we were doing exactly this advice. We couldn't have been the more idyllic little family scene, but he still turned his back on it, and he still left us there baking the cakes while he went off to do, well, something less wholesome with
Yeah.
his affair partner. So why
How come?
should I have carried? Should I still be baking cakes? With the teenagers might not be so keen now, but should I still not be asking questions and baking cakes? I think
Item
not.
number 33, Sarah. Do not give up, no matter what. No matter how dark it is or how bad you feel. More
Okay.
cakes. More cake.
Right. Okay.
Literally, more
Let me
cakes. More
so let me
cake.
tell you about the day that I did give up. Because I'd done all this stuff and it went on for months because I didn't want to be on my own with four children. I was terrified. The day I gave up was the day that I realized he'd actually had two separate Christmas dinners with two different families. And
God.
I found the receipts to prove this. And I thought, right, that was it. That was the line that he'd crossed. So all my hard work was to no good. But that was the best thing I ever did, giving up.
Yeah,
Why shouldn't you give up on someone? Why shouldn't you give up on someone who's abusing you?
exactly. It's sane and healthy. Why is the advice so screwed up? I mean, yeah, he can take his two Christmases and stuff them up its Christmas cracker. I mean, like, what a horrible person to do that. Yeah, why? I mean, that is the $64 million question. Why are you pick me dancing? Why is that the advice? Why are we assuming that somebody who did this is somebody that you, the chump, should exert more effort to win back? I mean, that's the conceit of this advice, is that they're a prize. And you know, you're kind of pathetic, you're kind of chumpy, you're sad, you're not perky. You got to work on that, and maybe they will grace you with their favor. Maybe your cakes will be good enough, Sarah, and he'll come back.
It's so
It's
contradictory as well, this advice. It says act as if you're moving on with your life, but then don't move on with your life.
mhm,
It's all about playing a role that it's about us being as inauthentic as they're being.
yeah. And you know what? It's good advice if you want to be a fake cyborg person. I mean, if those are your values, you want to be a Stepford wife, you want to be, I don't know, a fake person fronting a fake life. Yeah, follow the 180 by Michelle Weiner-Davis. But yes, if you want to be an authentic person, you don't want to, die by a thousand cuts, and then yeah, don't follow this advice. Also, I can't. we can't go a whole podcast without mentioning the patriarchy, but doesn't this just strike you as incredibly misogynistic? I mean, I guess they're trying to write it for both men and women. It's terrible advice, whatever your gender or orientation. But yeah, there's a whole overlay of don't question him, don't rock the boat, be a good submissive
It's
spouse
also
appliance.
it's just so hugely contradictory as well. So you're supposed to be strong and confident,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also supposed to not focus on yourself when communicating with your spouse. So I'm assuming that that means you sit there and listen to their great pearls of wisdom, as opposed to taking part in the conversation. So as someone that's not allowed to focus on yourself in a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not being strong and confident, are you? So which one do you do? Is 28 better advice, or is 31 when you're not allowed to focus on yourself, despite the fact that you've been told to be strong and confident, but suddenly you're not allowed to be strong and confident because you've got to sit there and provide an audience to
Right.
to to I don't know, whatever words of wisdom he's coming out with.
Yeah, don't focus. That's number 31. Do not focus on yourself when communicating with your spouse. Yeah.
And you're supposed to focus on somebody who you're not allowed to believe what you hear because they're speaking in absolute negatives because they're hurting and scared. But you're not allowed to point that out because you're not allowed to focus on yourself when communicating with your spouse. So you're supposed to be not
Right.
believing what you're listening to, but listen to it anyway because they're hurting and scared.
Right. And you also forgot the one where you're not supposed to question them. You're not supposed to ask. That's number 16. Ask nothing. Ask nothing. Number 22 or number 23. Do not argue about how they feel. So if they say, I am a scared and timid forest creature, Sarah, you cannot say, no, you're a man who had 2 Christmases and is screwing around on me. That is not allowed.
And you're also not allowed to say very much either. So you can't focus on yourself. And if you usually start the conversation, be scarce or short on words. So we're
Mm,
supposed to be a little bit mysterious as well, just a couple of words.
yeah.
It's the more you look at this, the more ludicrous
Mm,
this becomes.
yeah. Totally. I like number 7 too. Do not ask for reassurances. Yeah, don't. That would be needy and desperate. I guess we're being redundant again, but we can't ask for reassurances. Like, do I still have a 401k? Did you spend it on sex workers? Like what kind of reassurances can you not ask for? Is this like, do you still love me? That kind of thing? Or is it where's the money or who's going to take care of the kids? I mean, like what reassurance is kind of wide open there. Like what and again, it's the fact that this is so baffling that you can only conclude as a chump that you've done it wrong. Like it's all on you and you screwed up.
And also, you're supposed to be so. The other one I quite like is no matter what you're feeling today, only show your spouse happiness and contentment. Show him, her, someone she would want to be around. Well, surely, would you really want to be around someone who's being very scarce and short on words, someone who's not having a proper conversation because they're only focusing on you, and someone who is being strong and confident but not overly enthusiastic? I mean, surely someone that you want to be around is someone who is a genuine person, not someone who's following a whole list of instructions and desperately trying to be something that they're really not.
Sarah, that is the wrong answer. The right answer is be a good spouse appliance. Your feelings are irrelevant. Like just make those cakes and shut up about it. Just like
Does this actually work? I mean, are there people that have followed these rules and have actually come out the other side and are still going strong? I can't quite see that, to be honest.
I don't know. If you go, there's probably testimonials on the page, but I I am highly skeptical. I've been blogging for 11 years and refugees from these kinds of programs wash up on my shores every single day telling me how this advice failed them spectacularly. So, and that's probably because we didn't do all the steps correctly. You know, it's our fault. Like I don't think that we were cheerful, strong, outgoing, and attractive enough.
No, sadly not. I do remember one of the because I remember one of the things my husband said to me. One of his great lines that I'll never quite forget is that he said one of the reasons that he had an affair was because we had children and she didn't. And so she never asked about babysitters. He went, the problem with you is we could never go out because you'd always bring babysitters into it. And it's like, yes, of course, because actually these aren't my 4 children. These are your 4 children as well.
Oh my
And
God.
babysitting is kind of a thing when, they're 2, 3, 18 months. You don't really just leave them unattended. And the irony that I found was that she didn't have to ask about babysitting because I was the one
Well, you were
looking
doing
after
it all.
children.
Well, besides the completely irrelevant issue of it would never come up for her because she doesn't have any children. I
No,
mean, it'd be like saying, you never asked me about quadratic equations. Well, I'm not a mathematician. Like why? Like it's just such an unfair playing field. I mean, yeah, it's nuts. It's the mindfuck blender, as I call it. Just never ask. I mean, and that would be on my list, right? Like, don't ask them. Like, you're not going to get a satisfactory answer, and you're going to get a blame shifty answer. It's because they can, because they want to, because they're not deep, because they don't care about you. Um, and yeah, all this does, I think, is make it easier for cheaters to cheat and to keep their entitlement alive. I mean, imagine this. Isn't it weird that it's all written for the chump? It's not written for the cheater. There's nothing on here going, they're a little broken right now. You might want to like, you know, not tell them how the affair partner doesn't ask about babysitters. Like maybe that would hurt Sarah's feel. And like, there's no advice on here about how not to be an asshole. It's just completely geared to the chump. Because guess who's buying these desperate services and hiring the reconciliation industrial complex? It it's chumps. It's frightened people. It's sad and desperate people. That's who's buying this. The people who want to follow the recipe, who are so desperate for order in the face of chaos. That's who buys this crap. And people profit from it.
what's interesting as well is number 34. It says,
Mm,
do not backslide from your hard-earned changes. What hard-earned changes? I did a lot of this stuff. There
mm,
was no changing that went on. There might have been a bit of a pretense once in a while that went on, but that
yeah.
was about it. There weren't any genuine changes because how are you going to get genuine changes when you're validating their behavior by sitting at home, being cheerful, strong, outgoing, and attractive, not questioning anything, listening to everything they're doing. You're almost saying, here's a reward.
Yeah.
Here's a reward for your behavior. I'm going to be the most compliant, easygoing person ever. I'm going to effectively say that what you're doing is fine because I'm not going to challenge it. I'm going to take responsibility for myself for your behavior. And I'm going to be this perfect person for you to come home to who never asks any questions. I mean, how on earth is that going to make anybody who's proved themselves to be selfish and self-centered? How is that going to change their behavior? In fact, it is going to make them think, oh, look at me, this was a brilliant idea to have an affair because look what I've managed to achieve at home as well.
Well, according to what it says here, is that they're going to see what they're missing. They're going to see what they're missing because you're going to be a new, improved you, Sarah. You're going to be so nice and not angry, and you're not going to ruffle their feathers, and you're not going to hold this whole two Christmas thing against him. And he's going to say, "Boy, that's Sarah. She's cool. She's cool. She gets me. She loves me unconditionally because that's always what it's about, right? So I was unconditional. There's so many conditions for you. You weren't cheerful, outgoing, and attractive, but for them, there's no conditions, and that's how it's got to be. You just love them unconditionally. Don't snoop. Don't be mad. Don't ask questions. Be patient. Don't ask for assurances, and
We
maybe they'll
both
pick you. Maybe they'll pick you.
maybe, but they didn't, did they? Look at us two embittered individuals that didn't follow this wise advice. Look where it's got us.
Yeah,
It's got us a life. It's got us away from this. It's got us to the point where we're not constantly trying to work out what they're up to and what they're going to do next and who they're
that's
going to
right.
bring into the equation. Can you remember the moment that you, as number 34 said, did the thing where you backslide from your hard-earned changes, or did you never get to number 34? Did you
Oh,
do any of this
I
stuff?
was I was a failure at all of this. Pretty. I was a
Were you
kraken
nasty and
unleashed.
angry? Were you? We nasty and
I was-
angry.
Andrew G. Marshall had it right. I was a bitter bunny. I was a kraken. I was angry.
You had too many words, didn't you? You weren't scarce or short on words. You said stuff. You did, didn't you? It's your
I
fault.
did. I said things. I did. I said things. Oh, I also an inveterate snooper. I'm like, look, we're both journalists. We know how to find things. Like, give me a database. I'll make some phone calls. I'll call. I'm not shy about finding things out. So yeah, I did all the wrong things, which is probably why I'm not married to a sociopathic cheater any longer. I'm married to a good man. So, and that's what I got for not following this advice. I got a new, better, improved life. So,
Only you'd been a little more patient and a little less argumentative. Your
and I
life
gotta
could
say,
be
I think,
very different then.
you're a single mom. I was a single mom for many years. I think our kids turned out pretty damn great. I like to speak up for the single mothers, all this fear mongering, do this, or, your children are doomed. No, they turned out great. Thanks. Mine's 26. He's a nice young man.
And as my friend Jeff said to me, when I was expressing concern about bringing the children up on my own, he said, "Look, Sarah, you've got a fifth child going on there. It's not going to, you're already doing it." And I think a lot of people do forget that. I think
Yeah.
so many people are doing all the work anyway. They are
Yeah.
the sensible parent, and they forget about that.
Right. Don't, my God, why on earth? I think the worst thing you could do is steps 1 through 34 in front of your children to just do this kabuki theater of inauthenticity. You do far more damage to your children than throwing out a toxic person who's cheating on you. So yeah, that's number 28. Be strong and confident. It's just, what are we being strong and confident about? My strong and confident and getting the jerk out of your life. That would be my advice. I would agree with Michelle Weiner-Davis for number 28. Be strong and confident. Well,
Yeah.
Sarah, I think we have to choose a fuckwit of the week. So,
Do you think it should be the person that dispensed this wise advice?
yes.
They're shameless, unreliable, and gobsmackingly entitled. It's Fuckwit of the Week.
And our fuckwit of the week is Michelle Weiner-Davis of Divorce Busting for giving us the 180.
Oh, that's a fuckwit.
That wraps another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. You want to leave us a mighty story or a fuckwit of the week submission? Check out our new website, tellmehowyourmighty.com. That's yours spelled Youre. We've got all the episodes, show notes, links to our guests, and you can see the tea room where Sarah and I first met. If you enjoyed this episode, please review the podcast and follow us. Thanks. See you next week.